Hey everybody, my name is Will Deming. I am the president of HavenScope, and on this week's episode of the HavenScope Podcast, I have myself as well as Allison Rancon again.
Hello.
How's it feel to be back, Allie? It hasn't been that long.
Happy to be back. Excited to yap about my recently watched movies and TV shows.
Oh yeah, and then one of the lights that are beeping on us. If you hear any beeping during the show, folks, that is one of the lights maybe gaining consciousness. I have no idea why it's doing that. That's the pleasures of working on productions like this.
If you don't see us after this episode, the light got to us.
Yes, the light prop might have either gotten us or burst into flames and burned the whole building down, in which case you might hear about that. We'll see.
I think that still counts as getting us.
Yeah. Yeah, pretty much the same thing. You might have done it on purpose. But I guess I will actually go first. First on this podcast, I feel like, except for the one time I was by myself, I will go first. The show that I'm going to talk about is Poker Face. It is a streaming-only service on Peacock. And have you ever heard of this, Allie?
I have not. I don't have Peacock. So stuff that's only on Peacock that's an exclusive club that I'm not allowed in.
I think that's NBC off the top of my head. Like, I think it's actually the people that own The Office too, or something like that. I could not tell you anything else that they own because there's like so many other. There's like Paramount Plus. There's so many other ones. But it stars Natasha Lionel. It's actually it's not every episode's directed by Ryan Johnson or like written, but the show is created by him. He's worked on movies such as Looper, Brick, Star Wars: The Last Jedi, which we will not get into a discussion about on this podcast. Please do not argue in the comments about that.
Or do.
Yeah.
That would be fun.
Oh God. But and he's also some of the most the stuff he's probably most known for nowadays is the Knives Out films, that and Glass Onion. And then
I loved those movies.
Oh, they are great. And
I haven't seen Knives Out. I only saw Glass Onion.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Because only one of them's on Netflix. The other one is locked behind. You have to pay for it or something.
Wait, really? Did they take it down? I guess.
At last time I checked.
Oh, you know what? I think
I could be wrong.
Yeah, I think what it is Knives Out wasn't technically through Netflix, but the Glass Onion wasn't, and there's a third one that he's doing that I think is also through Netflix. I think they made that deal after Knives Out came out. I think that's what it was. But the fun thing about this show is this show technically takes place in the same universe, technically, but like it doesn't actually really connect to anything, and I think it's technically before any of those films. I don't know. It's like one of those things where it's like doesn't really matter, but it's there. But basically, unlike those movies, this is done as more of a Columbo style show, as like that old show. Have you ever heard of Columbo?
I actually have heard of Columbo, yeah.
Have you seen it? Or like know what like kind of like the style of the show?
I know the style. I know because I think I've only seen like an episode here or there, but one of my friends loves the show, yaps about the show all the time. So I'm partially familiar with Columbo.
Okay, because for all the viewers at home that if they don't know about Columbo and what Poker Face, how it's kind of like set up is unlike a lot of other like detective or like mystery shows, they just outright show you who the bad guy is and what crime they committed, and they kind of that's how they start off pretty much every episode for the most part, is they show you who's doing what, maybe why they did it pretty much, and then you kind of go from there as they kind of like as the character in the show, her name is Charlie, as she tries to figure out what happened, kind of the situation she gets put in, which is basically how it basically is just a modern day Columbo. I think that even Ryan Johnson has been out there just like basically saying like, yeah, we're doing another Columbo basically.
There was a show on, I think it was ABC years ago, called Motive. And I think it only ran for like a season, canceled after one season, where they would start out the show with like showing the murder or the crime or whatever. And instead of you, the viewer, trying to figure out who did it, you're trying to figure out their motive. And like they give you clues along that line. So I always really liked that model for a crime procedural. I think it's more interesting than just, oh no, where's the bad guy this week?
Yeah. Then I think you'll actually like Poker Face because it pretty much is like kind of a similar setup. One thing that I have not mentioned that's very interesting about the show. So let's just say it's not supernatural, but Charlie basically has a supernatural like ability she can always tell when someone is lying. No matter what, she can tell if you're lying. That is like it is basically a superhero ability. They don't really act like it's that. It basically is, but that's pretty much like the other thing about the show. She can always tell when someone is lying, and the fun thing is they actually do a really good job of playing around that, about how like she doesn't just figure things out immediately, how she might infer some information from a lie even if it's not the right way to go about it, that kind of thing. Like it's not just it's not like an instant win button a lot of the time for a lot of things. She still has to work through things, or why someone is even lying to her in the first place, because like it might lead her down like one path, but like the actual way to discover what's going on is another path that she needs to work through other things first.
Interesting. I'm assuming that ability makes her really good at poker, which is where the show's name comes from.
Yes.
Nice.
The first,
I'm so good.
The pilot of the show is a little bit more self-contained, because that kind of sets up why Charlie. Okay, another thing I forgot to be, the show is basically her on the run for most of it, because the first episode kind of sets up why she's on the run, and it's in Las Vegas. She works in a casino, that kind of thing. Things happen from there. That episode is mainly about, it's not she doesn't do the crime, she gets framed for it or whatever, but it goes from there, and then she's pretty much just doing a road trip across the country to run away from the people that are trying to capture her.
Fun.
And that's kind of why they can do like the story of the week type things, and why she's kind of just running into all kinds of people all over the country, that kind of stuff.
That was light beep number 2.
Light beep number 2.
Keep track at home.
Yeah, keep track at home, everybody. I'll make sure to we'll put a counter for the podcast in the edit to make sure people can keep track of whatever why the light is beeping.
Place your bets now. Will we get over 5?
Yeah, we'll see. But it's really good, and actually I literally think the teaser for season 2 just dropped today. I forget, it should be coming out this year, I would assume, because this came out, oh man, that would have been, I think it was 2023 is when the first season came out. But season 2 should be premiering this year, and I'm pretty excited for it.
Nice. Is that, and you said that's on Peacock?
Yes, Peacock.
Is it a Peacock original?
Technically, yes. It only airs on Peacock. It's only technically a streaming service.
I'll have to see if I can still get a free trial of Peacock to watch it or something. You
should be able to. If you've never signed up for it, you should be able to. And I do know, even though this also costs money, there are physical copies of it. There's like Blu-rays, and there's probably DVDs of it out there.
Nice.
Because I know Ryan Johnson's a big proponent of there being at least physical media versions of these stuff.
And I appreciate that, because I am a physical media advocate. I never watch my physical media, but I continue to buy it and stock up for the day that the satellite does eventually come, crashing down, and we no longer have
or that asteroid
services. Or that asteroid, yeah.
We'll see.
Forgot about that.
We'll see if the asteroid gets us before the lights do.
You're not reading the cards.
How could I read the cards?
You're reading me. It's not like it's one thing, like my eye twitches or something.
Nah.
It's just a general, you can just tell.
Just that something is off. That's the best way to describe it. I could just tell.
When anyone is lying. 100% of the time. I'm gonna touch my nose.
Nah, it doesn't work like that. I'm not a soothsayer. I can't predict the future. There's nothing mystical about it. Just if someone is intentionally lying, that's it.
Is there any movie or show that you want to bring up?
So recently I watched this movie called I Care a Lot. Have you seen it? I think it's on Netflix.
Is this the show about the weird stalker lady, or am I thinking of something else?
I think you're thinking of Baby Reindeer.
Okay.
That's the show with the stalker lady, which is also a phenomenal show.
Okay, because I've heard that's good. What is this about?
So I Care a Lot. Give me 1 second. I'm pulling up the Google because I'm terrible.
You're fine.
It is it's a Netflix original.
Okay.
And it's about this lady that exploits the elderly. She
Oh wait, does this have Peter Dinklage in it?
Yes.
Okay, I've heard of this at least then.
So what she does is she becomes like a legal caregiver for rich elderly people, takes over all of their assets, and then puts them in a nursing home, whether they need to be in a nursing home or not, so that she can spend their money as she pleases.
Ooh.
And it's all going fantastic for her until she unknowingly becomes the legal guardian of a mother of a Russian mafia crime lord.
Oh, okay.
And it kind of hits the fan. And it's a very good movie.
You reap what you sow.
And yeah. It's both a very frustrating movie because very well acted to the point that you actually like hate the character. So it's a very frustrating movie to see such a kind of morally corrupt character get as far as she does, but it has a very satisfying ending.
Okay.
I thought it was a satisfying ending.
You recognize that woman, Marla? That's your mother, isn't it? After I destroy you, I will destroy her.
Go ahead, I don't give a about that sociopath.
Do you know the lead actress's name? Because I can picture her in my head, but it's not. The name is not coming to me. I know she was in Gone Girl.
Rosamund Pike?
Yes, Rosamund Pike. Yes, that's who it is. Yep, she was really great in Gone Girl,
Which I have not seen.
I would highly recommend it.
It's on my watch list on whatever streaming service it's on, but I have yet to actually sit down and watch it.
Okay. Do you know, is this based on, like, maybe not the Russian, like, maybe not like the Russian part, but like, is this based on a true story? Because I feel like I've heard, like, obviously this is the type of scams that do happen in general, but do you know if this is based on anyone in particular?
From what I know, it's not based on a single like con artist or anything like that, but this scam unfortunately is a very real one that happens too often. So it's kind of based off of similar circumstances. But very, very good movie. Some really good plot twists, I think. Really well shot. Some really interesting shots and stuff. And I think it was very interesting to have Peter Dinklage kind of play not the main antagonist of the film, but her main antagonist.
Is he the part of the? Is he part of the Russians, like the mob?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He's the big bad guy in the movie. And I think that was a really interesting choice because the main character, a lot of her point of view is kind of, it's very feminist. She's a woman. She can do anything. She's not afraid of any man or anything like that. And then you have Peter Dinklage's character who, yes, he is a man and all of that, but he still has kind of that physical.
So that is a factor in the movie. It's part of the plot.
It's not a huge part of the plot. It's kind of a more unspoken part of the plot. Where from what I remember, they don't necessarily bring it up at any point besides her maybe, making an offhanded comment or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's very interesting to watch, this physically smaller man, boss around these big, Russian mafia guys. That's 3 on the light. And it creates a really interesting dynamic to watch. And then when you pit that character against the character that, who she sees her only disadvantage and she doesn't see it as a disadvantage of being female, it's an interesting dynamic.
Okay. Yeah.
Very interesting dynamic. Highly recommend the movie.
All right. I actually kind of want to bring up, because you'd seen Glass Onion, but you haven't seen the original Knives Out, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
I need to either find it on a streaming service or shell out the $5 to Amazon and rent it.
See, I'm surprised Netflix wouldn't just pay to keep that on their service or not, because they basically own the rights to distribute Glass Onion and the other one that Rian Johnson is working on. There might be a third that he's working on for them as well. But that's just the lovely thing about streaming services nowadays is even their own content, they're kind of just licensing out to each other. Like I know Max does that a lot now, or like they're not even like funding some of their own. Like there was like a Batman animated show that went to Amazon, even though HBO is Warner Brothers, and it's like you guys aren't even going to make your own show. That's kind of just the world we live in now, and I guess who knows how well Warner, or is it Warner Discovery, whatever it's called, who knows how they're actually doing as a company.
Well, that's something I find so frustrating. Is it happens a lot, I think, with animated movies where Netflix will have the third and the fourth one, but you can't find the first or the second one anywhere. Yeah. Or 1, 3, and 4 of the movie will be somewhere, but you have to go over to Amazon and pay the money to see the second one. It's like, come on, man. I just want to binge all of my movies all at one time. Don't make me bounce between streaming services.
That's always the frustrating thing with stuff like Amazon, and I know Apple a little bit like that because I've heard that from my mom, is like sometimes you think a movie is part of their service, but it's still it's part of like the overall like catalog, but isn't included with Prime. It's the one that you can actually buy individually, because I know Netflix doesn't have that because it's technically a slightly different thing. Who knows? Maybe they will one day.
They started doing that on
Wait,
Netflix.
really?
So there's a tier of Netflix that has ads. It's the cheapest one, and if you're on the cheapest tier, there's certain shows and movies that you can't access until you pay more money.
I thought it was just they showed you ads. Huh.
And I'm really disappointed in Netflix because I love Netflix. I have been a Netflix supporter since day one. I've always said like they're my favorite streaming service just because, the first one kind of nailed it the first time, and then they're not nailing it anymore. Come on, man.
Well, the problem with that is they might not be nailing it necessarily, but they're still making in a lot of money. I think they just said something like it was an absurd amount of billions of dollars that they're willing to spend on content. It's like, yeah, we keep spending this much. Like, it's like, okay, but like, how much of that is going to be good? Is it going towards how much of that is going towards the actual creative?
If you Netflix, I'm looking at you. Who's the CEO of Netflix? Let's pretend I just said their name.
Okay, we'll pretend.
If you're gonna spend billions of dollars on content, please give me content that's worth billions of dollars. I'm really, really sick of watching really bad CGI. Thank you. Please take this into consideration and stop canceling good shows. Thank you.
Yeah, at the end of the day, if there's one thing I wish streaming services would at least like, it feels like shows don't really have a chance anymore, and some of that is defined by simply like a show on a streaming service is a little bit different than something that's actually getting aired on TV. There's no traditional ads that are being like broadcast or a part of that channel or whatever. So it's a little bit different, especially when they just put the whole thing out there. But like, it really feels like shows nowadays don't have a chance to build an audience at all. They either get that one season, they either kind of get made with like, hey, we got we'll get 2 seasons no matter what, and then they're always just kind of canceled after that kind of thing, where it really doesn't feel like shows ever get the chance to either wrap things up or really like get to build an audience and actually feel like, okay, well, like we're maybe not the most popular show in the world, but like we have our little like niche little crowd here, like we keep the lights on. And it's like a lot of the times it's like, no, like I would love if someone out there has like put together how many different shows on Netflix have just been like canceled and like will never be continued or something like that.
I'll put that together. I'll go through that and I'll put that together for the next episode. Keep your eyes out for the next episode so that we can look at how many canceled Netflix shows there's been.
How many shows and movies, or I guess movies wouldn't count, how many shows have been killed by Netflix?
Place your bets now.
That kind of thing. But
that kind of surprises me. At least in my brain, that shouldn't happen, right? Because you used to have an example I can think of is Schitt's Creek, where they had 2 or 3 seasons that they were doing kind of okay on the CBC, where they were originally broadcast, and then they went on Netflix and their audience skyrocketed. They got that giant Netflix bump and they were able to, continue on the show and wrap it up in a nice little bow. And you would think that with how many people are using streaming services now, that having your show on a streaming service is like a ticket to keep your show going. Yeah. You know what I mean? But I think there's too much on the streaming services and everyone's overwhelmed, and because we're so overwhelmed we don't know what to watch, you just go and watch Bob's Burgers again. There's like
especially for our generation and the now younger generations, there's a lot of like, there's not really those 4 beeps, but there's not really that whole like okay, it's like the show's on every Fridays at 9 p.m. I got to turn to this channel, that kind of thing. Like, honestly, I wonder how many kids like in elementary and middle school right now, do they even like, are they even watching anything on TV that is like, it only premieres on this channel at this day, other than like maybe some like cartoons on like a Cartoon Network or that. But even then, I have to imagine most of that stuff is on a service that's getting premiered either the next day or same time. Like, I really wonder how many kids actually like kind of have that experience anymore nowadays. That isn't just like, hey, the streaming service will like premiere the episode at like 3 a.m. Eastern or something like that. Or like, because like some do pretty much premiere at set times. Like I know Severance that I talked about last episode, that premieres like, it technically is out Fridays, but it actually premieres 9 p.m. Eastern on Thursdays is when it gets put up on the service, which is nice. And that's kind of there, but that's also not necessarily the same thing, because like you could also technically, and there's people that do this just to spoil it for other people, and if you do that, I hate you and I will find you, because the other thing is they're just putting the episode up. You could just scroll through the whole thing. It's not technically being aired or like a stream that's like you're watching through. Like, it's technically just the episode getting put up. Like, it's really interesting how we actually like digest a lot of like the content that we consume nowadays, and how it's like being given to us.
And I would say not even being given to us, just kind of shoved at us.
Yeah.
Just pushed and pushed and pushed with a hope that you're consuming something, but if not,
and
pushing it anyways.
Being pushed and then being made with the idea in mind, because there was like I remember there were some people that worked on like shows for Netflix like months ago that were out there talking about, it's like, yeah, we were told to like dumb down scenes because the idea is like someone is probably going to be on their phone watching TikTok or not paying fully attention. Like, we need to make these characters like they would have like these bulletin points that were like, you need to make the characters bring up what they're doing more often, so that viewers who aren't aware are at least able to pay attention if they like look up from their phone. And it's like, what?
I just saw something talking about that. They were talking about Honora, the movie that just won an Oscar.
Oh, I think it won 4 Oscars. I think it was like 4 something Oscars.
Oscar,
yeah.
like a bunch of Oscars.
Yeah, like Best Picture, yeah.
But someone was saying how like, yeah, it's a Cinderella story, and at a couple points, I haven't watched it, so I don't know for sure, but at a couple points through the movie, they would like quite literally come out and say like, oh, you're like Cinderella and you're like a princess. And it's like, come on, like, let your audience be an audience. Demand your audience's attention and then show them good art. I don't know.
Yeah, I
also have no room to talk because I also love terrible movies. So
yeah, but sometimes terrible movies know that they're terrible, that kind of thing. They know they don't have to try.
I love when terrible movies know they're terrible. There's an entire section on Roku that's just rom-coms that are ridiculous.
Oh no.
Absolutely ridiculous. And they're all so self-aware that they're ridiculous. It's fantastic.
I always feel bad for the terrible shows and movies, because no matter what, every terrible show and movie has like a crew of hardworking people that wanted to make something good, and then it maybe just didn't turn out the right way.
And that's why there's such a special place in my heart for terrible media.
You gotta hope that most people, like, if they know it didn't turn out quite well, especially the ones that do gain a cult audience, that like hopefully they can appreciate. It's like, okay, maybe it didn't turn out quite the way you guys intended, but hey, maybe it's unintentionally really hilarious.
That's like the first one that comes to mind for me is the Evil Dead trilogy.
Oh,
like
yeah.
That first movie was made with a budget of like no money in someone's garage. They didn't want to film it. The second movie was pretty much remaking the first one.
Oh, yeah.
But it has the massive cult following and the TV show spin-offs and the musical spin-off, and you know,
there was a musical?
There was a musical, Evil Dead the musical. I was in it. Don't
you were in it?
I was in it.
Like your school did it or something?
Community theater. Near my hometown did Evil Dead the musical. And
do you have any pictures that we could put on screen right now?
I'll have to dig.
That's one task you have over spring break. Try to dig. See if you can. You don't have to.
There's proof out there that exists that I was in Evil Dead the musical.
But if I could point to the screen and a picture could appear, that would be amazing.
Pop up right here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'll dig for pictures. But yeah, Evil Dead, I think a perfect example of not the best movie making the best out of what, you know, fans lifted it up and they were like, oh, okay, we're gonna run with this and actually make some good media out of it.
Yeah, cult. It really, especially like when it comes to something like home media, which you don't really. I forget. There's always been like some like interviews out there of like I know Matt Damon, because he has like a production company and stuff like that. They talk where him and like other producers will talk about the idea that like you can't really just have box office performance anymore for these movies and stuff like that, because it used to be you had like an okay performance at the box office, but then like you'd make up the profits through the physical media, that kind of thing. Like it would be basically almost as much money as you made at the movies, and you just don't see that anymore because of like streaming services, like less and less physical media being made. You've got stores like I think Best Buy might have gotten rid of their movie section. I think some Targets have. That was five beeps. But you're straight up seeing like those places just even disappear. So like it almost kind of adds up in some ways, like maybe not some of the TV shows, because I don't know what that would be, but like especially what kind of movies get made by these streaming services is because like there's no real like, yeah, we could put these in theaters and they can make money, but they don't have nearly as much potential or like much of a market anymore, because they've pretty much like that entire physical media section has like died out. It's basically becoming like a collector space. Which is a bummer. It's very depressing. Which is a bummer. Because I know I know Rian Johnson, not to circle back to some of the other stuff. Rian Johnson has been a big proponent of like physical media, that kind of thing. I know he has like within his contract with Netflix, they have to at least put out the Knives Out movies like in theaters, even if they're going to be on Netflix. I think it's like they'll be, I think Glass Onion was, I forget if it was in theaters for like a month before it streamed on Netflix or if it was only like a week or two. I forget. But I do know he's done like that because there's been a bunch of directors out there, especially because I know if you want to be in the Oscars, I think you have to, not that was necessarily his reason, but for a lot of directors, some of the bigger ones that do like movies for these streaming services, they tend to carve out like this needs to be in theaters, not just because otherwise it can't even be for award consideration, but also because we still like the experience of going to the movies. Yeah. Maybe we should offer that for these service movies. And I feel like that's something that's starting to finally come around post COVID, is people going back to movie theaters. That might just be me in my bubble, but yeah, finally 5 years to the day. Wait, it is March. It is March 12th that we're recording this. So it's 5 years to the day, at least, that my school district was shut down. Allie, you just made me want to turn off the podcast now and go like sit in a corner. Yeah, like, happy 2025. What even is time anymore? But yeah, I feel like, at least me personally, I'm going to the movies more often. Okay. I feel like some things like, this is a couple years ago, but the Barbie movie, like Barbenheimer, that was huge. Wicked, I feel like there's more movies, or at least they're being marketed in a way to draw people to the theater. Yeah. I don't know. It feels like to me, it's, you hear about like the box office disappointments and stuff like that. It feels like to me that for better and for worse, people are like a little bit more aware of if a movie is like worth seeing, especially because of like things like Rotten Tomatoes, like more like the online types of like, everyone's an expert now. Yeah, everyone's an expert, and like there's never not anyone not talking about a movie. It's not just a review you read in like the newspaper, or you maybe heard from like Siskel and Ebert back in the day, and then you think like, oh, maybe I'll go check that movie out. You're gonna basically have probably heard an opinion about that movie from someone somewhere, especially of how ubiquitous like social media is and stuff like that. Especially in terms of like if the movie is good or not, is it worth seeing? And sometimes you see it at least like translate a little bit to like, you'll have like I've never seen it, but it was like one of those movies that you don't really see get put in theaters that much anymore. It was Anyone But You. It had Sydney Sweeney and Glenn Powell in it. I loved that movie. Oh, okay. I loved that movie. I saw it on Netflix, did not see it in theaters. Okay, but I loved that movie. The thing about that movie is it actually did, for especially its budget and the type of movie it was, because was it rated R? It was rated R. Or was it PG-13? I'm pretty sure it had to. Remembering the movie, it had to have been rated R. Okay, because that was the other thing about the movie. It was one of those raunchy, like, kind of comedies, like rom-com comedies that basically, like, you don't really see get put out in theaters anymore, and it actually did pretty well for what it is. It was one of those examples of, like, okay, maybe not TV series, maybe these studios should be, like, putting these movies out more, but also it could be, like, that kind of thing where it's, like, word of mouth actually caught on, and then people actually, like, okay, look, we're gonna go see this movie, that kind of thing. The girls love Shakespeare adaptations. What can I say? Exactly. A Shakespeare adaptation is going to kill every time. That's not true, but True. Maybe not the Othello adaptation that was a basketball movie. Was that a recent thing? No. Oh, okay. No. This was back in the 2000s where every movie was a Shakespeare adaptation. Oh, yeah. But yeah, that movie was so enjoyable for me because of that factor. Oh, okay. Because I know a lot of my favorite rom-coms, like the iconic ones, are, adaptations of Shakespeare or Jane Austen or something like that. So seeing that kind of modernized to
literally now instead of 10, 15 years ago. It was refreshing. It was fun. Fun movie.
And it's a good example of like, hey, maybe put these movies out in theaters and you'll make some money back, and it'll help more movies being made. Like even if that movie's not my cup of tea, like if it's like a movie that can actually make some money, that can keep people employed, keep people in working, instead of just getting put onto a streaming service that like maybe would have still been popular there, but maybe it wouldn't have funded. I don't know. There's so much that goes into it. It gets
lost.
Yeah.
It gets put into the streaming service and it gets lost because it's competing with a bajillion other things. It's, you might not even ever see it going through a streaming service, even if you're on that specific category of movie. Like I don't know. I get very overwhelmed by choice with these streaming services. So it's a lot of the times I just end up watching the same thing over and over. That's 6.
Was that 6?
That's 6.
Okay, that was 6. Well, folks, that was this week's episode of the HavenScope Podcast. We still don't know why the light is beeping. We got up to 6, and that was sure something. Maybe we'll figure that out. Maybe we won't. But Allie, thank you so much for joining me on this week's podcast.
Thank you for having me, Will.
All right, and we hope everyone has a wonderful day.
Have a great day. 5 years. 5 years since lockdown.
Oh, well, you brought that up. No, okay, shut the cameras off. Turn the lights off. Burn the building down. Something, I don't know.